Yo, what's good, beautiful people? This is your boy Monty, aka Mr. Motivation.
And I am Shakim. Blessings.
And what's good, y'all? This is the Hear Him Out Show, a space we created for men to be heard where women are welcome to listen.
And our aim is to speak truth, add value, and offer a perspective that leads to growth and elevation.
Woo, yo, we got a dope episode for y'all today, okay? This is going to be short and sweet and to the point. If you're listening, go ahead, go to YouTube, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. We appreciate y'all. Leave comments, share, all that other good stuff, all right? So this episode is entitled When Shit Hits the Fan.
Because it will.
Because it will, and indefinitely.
It does.
When it hits the fan. But before we get into the meat of the episode, we like to do a little something here. So if you're new to the show, two things we like to do is to clear the space and to set the stage. As artists, as performers, it's important that we put ourselves in a position to give you the best of us because that's what y'all deserve. So we're going to go ahead and clear the space today. How are we going to do that, Shakim?
We're going to do it with these chimes right here, man. I like to use sound to get us all on the same wavelength so that we can all channel and receive messages from the divine together. Ashe. Hey, hey.
All right, Ashe. The space is clear. Now we're going to set the stage. As a speaker, as a performer, one thing I like to do to set the stage, I like to get myself in a mental state, and sometimes I battle negative self-talk. So one thing I like to do is to say this mantra that I've used many times, and if you're a fan of the show, you've probably heard this before, okay? God, universe, I surrender my fear of failure, my fear of success, my doubt in my ability, my worry about money, my insecurities of my past, and my uncertainty of the future to you. Because I know and understand wholeheartedly that my potential is limitless, and I will utilize that limitless potential to capitalize upon the enormous and abundant opportunities that today brings. So that's something I say anytime I'm battling doubt. So with that being said, the space is clear, the stage is set. Let's get into it. This is going to be a nice, quick, sweet episode, okay?
Yeah.
So this is going to be practical when shit hits the fan. So basically, I feel like a lot of us dudes, vulnerability ain't our strong suit. I feel like our female counterparts, they lean into that vulnerability, and we can get into it later why that is, but they have more access to that. We fall victim to what I call involuntary vulnerability, right? We get vulnerable when we ain't got no choice, when it's the last resort, and we call that when shit hits the fan, right? When you got bills that you didn't foresee, when you're doing something in a relationship that you shouldn't be doing, when you got a family emergency, pretty much when all the pressures of being a man pile up, and shit hits the fan.
You're broken.
Yeah, you're broken. What do you do with that? Now, there's a lot of different ways you can handle that situation, but what we came up with, we were just talking after a training session. We're like, yo, how do we do that? How do we deal with when shit hits the fan? And so we came up with this that is going to be known for the time being as the method. Okay? So what do you do when shit hits the fan? You got to release, shift, pivot, plan, and execute. Execute, okay? So you got to release, shift, pivot, plan, and execute. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the first one, release. Y'all remember when you were a kid and you got your ass whooped, right? And you couldn't talk back to your mom or your dad in that moment, but when you got back in the room and you shut the door, you started cussing them out. I can't believe it. When I get bigger, you know.
Punching the bed.
Yo, you hit the bed.
Screaming into the pillow. Hey, that shit is important.
It's important. You got to release that energy, right? So on a serious note, you got to release the energy. When shit hits the fan and you start to feel overwhelmed, you have to find a constructive way to release. One way I like to release, I cry, y'all. I will go for a drive. I ain't gonna cry in public and whatnot, okay? I'm still a man, shit. But I will go out and I will cry. It's like these angry thug tears that come down, okay? But I just release that because I got so much shit, and in this moment, I don't have the answer, Sway.
That's this cry.
Yo,
you know what I'm saying? It's tricky.
But I have to release that, whether it's the vulnerability, whether it's the insecurities. Oftentimes, we want to man up. We want to hold that shit inside. That energy does not dissipate. It does not disappear. You have to first start by releasing that. If you got to scream, if you got to cry, if you got to work out, don't do nothing stupid. Don't take it out on somebody else, especially somebody you care for, because you'll regret that shit. But you got to find a healthy release.
That's why I got into Crump. That's why I got into martial arts, is because you have to get it out. And you see the animal kingdom, they do this all the time. They do this shit all the time. because they know that they have to keep their balance nice and refined and harmonized in order to exist efficiently. So humans, for some reason, we like to keep shit bottled up. But you see young niggas like us, we grew up out here, we pull up to an alley somewhere, open up a car door and play some music and dance till we couldn't move no more. And now, for some reason, you could think more clearly. So you got to release.
Hey, I love that. All right, so the next one, shift. So when we talk about shift, I'm talking about it from a mental perspective. You have to shift. Now, this is hard because this takes a lot of practice. But recently, for those who don't know, I'm a new dad. Okay, shout out to my babies. But our nanny had to go, and I love the nanny. She's so dope. I'm cool. Her husband's a writer in the same industry. It's not just like a nanny; it's like a friend, right? So she got her own situation. She got to go. So I found that out literally an hour after I got in a car accident, my first ever car accident. So here I am. I'm going actually to the coffee shop for us to map out our episodes, right? Get in a car accident. I'm like, all right, I'm going to shake it off. It could have been worse. We didn't have the kids in the car. Whoop-de-woo. Boom, an hour later, found out the nanny had a situation. I had to go home. You know, I ain't going to give you all the details. But it was just like shit hit the fan in that moment. And because of my work, my personal development, I was able to shift. I took my babies in the stroller, and we went for a nice walk in the park. And I just remember laughing because I was like, you know what? God, you testing me. This happened for a reason. So I shifted from, yo, how am I going to figure this out? Now I got to pay for this. Now I got to deal with insurance. To, all right, maybe I'm meant to slow down. Now I got to figure out. Now I got to search for a new nanny. Now I got to figure out this car situation. All that is new. But I had to go to a mental shift. So after you release that energy in a physical way, a visceral way, you got to mentally shift. And then the next one you got to pivot. Let's break that down.
Pivot to me becomes more physical and directional. So when shift is happening mental, pivot is when you say, okay, that is not working. Obviously, God is trying to get my attention. Obviously, the Most High is trying to tell me something, and it's doing it through my immediate circumstances. Which direction can I turn so that I can now move towards my goal in the most efficient and sustainable way? I have a homegirl who every time I see her, she's more successful financially. Every time I see her, she got some more money. And I'm like, yo, what is your secret? Like, what is it that you're doing? And she says straight out, she's like, to be completely honest with you, I'm just really good at pivoting. I'm really good at noticing when it's time to pivot and change direction, and I just be moving with the flow of the current. So I was like, nigga, that's a superpower. So knowing which direction to turn, we see that in martial arts. When a punch is coming in your direction, you're not going to just meet it head on. You're not going to block without moving your head. You have to allow it to go in that direction while moving out of the way and now manipulate the momentum to your advantage. So pivot is really important for me.
So let's back that up real quick. So pivot, before you do the physical pivot, you got to release that energy. Then you got to shift mentally. Then you have to pivot physically. And then you got to plan. Now you got to plan. Now, I don't want to go too much into this because there's a lot of different ways to plan. But if I can give y'all some actionable shit, very simple, is to make a list.
Let's make a list.
Just, it's so easy to get overwhelmed. When shit hits the fan, it's easy to get overwhelmed and have all this stuff up in your head. So by making a list, I got to do this, I got to do that, I got to get this paid, I got to do this. And then by making that list, you can prioritize. What do I need to get done now? What's immediate? What do I need to handle now? What needs to be done later? Yeah. And I cannot tell you, when I make my list, how euphoric that shit is to be
it's
like,
crazy.
Done.
I check that off. What? When I check my checklist off, I feel like a grown ass man, bro. Because sometimes it seems like it's a million things going wrong, and it's just like 4.5 like heavy things. It's like you check that shit off at the end of the day, you be feeling like Rocky, cuz you got your top. And it
gets you energy because we like to over catastrophize, right? When I got in that car accident, I could have been like, oh man, and then the nanny, oh man, the past version of me would have just allowed that to mess up my whole year, my whole month. But instead, I release, I shift, and I pivot, and I plan. So now I'm like, okay, I go back on tour for my speaking this time. I go on set this time. Okay, so I need this by this date, that date, that date. You get to utilize the time. Yes. Now, the last thing you got to do, okay, execute. Execute. After you make the plan, you actually got to execute once the shit hits the fan. So when you execute, you talk about the 4-quarter system. Let's break that down for the people.
I have a system that changed my life called 4 quarters. I wondered how it was in school that we were able to learn Algebra 2, Spanish, history, all these things all at one time in one semester, and really efficiently be able to participate in these conversations about these things. And I realized it was because of the structure. I didn't go to Spanish every day. I went twice a week, and it was a 3-hour class.
Facts.
You did the homework, and before you know it, a nigga speaking Spanish. So I structured my days out and broke them down into 4 quarters. so that I can balance all the endeavors that I do. People will make you feel like you can't do a lot of things, but you can as long as they're structured right. So my first quarter is meditation in the morning. My second quarter is working out. My third quarter is always some type of study. So whether it's my literature study or whether I'm listening to a lecture, blah, blah.
Facts.
And then my fourth quarter is creating. So whether it's writing my book, recording the songs, I have a list of videos that I need to get done because I shoot. 4 quarters will change your life because it's going to force you into execution. I know that doing these 4 without doing the 5th one is, you might as well just be a piece of shit sitting in your cave.
Basically.
You might as well, because I've been that person not executing. It's like you have all this bundled up energy that's not getting expressed to the world. The superpower that I've seen in most of the people I look up to, they were just good at fucking stepping out on the ledge, risking it all and doing it.
Doing it, y'all.
So find my 4-quarter system helped for me. We're going to go into that one day further, maybe do a whole episode on this idea.
Facts. We got to.
But if you can break your day down into 4 executable quarters, you can do way more than you think. Just act on it. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning. Just fucking go for it.
And now just a little abbreviation of that. Like I said, I'm a new dad. I work for myself. I don't have a typical 9 to 5. So I don't have 4 full quarters. I got 2 kids. It's unpredictable. But what I do is I have the nanny come at least 3 days a week, and I get 4 hours. So I break those 4 hours into quarters. So that first hour, I do my journal. I do my prayer. I do my meditation. The second one, I do my not so fun stuff. I got to answer emails. I got to make calls. And those last 2 hours I use to be creative. And by breaking that stuff down into the 4 quarters, I know I got to be disciplined enough. I'm only going to give this much time. And it really focuses me and helps me to stop being distracted. So quick recap before we go into the segment of the day, okay? When shit hits the fan, this is the method. You got to release. You got to shift mentally. You have to pivot physically. You have to make some kind of plan. Start with a list. That's the basic thing. And then most importantly, you got to execute. Use the 4th quarter system as a way to structure a way to execute. Because if you don't execute, when the shit hits the fan, it's going to stay that way.
Yeah.
Okay? So if you're new to the show, one thing we like to do here on a regular basis is we like to have a segment. And today's segment is Men's Mental Health Tip. And we're going to keep this short and sweet. Resistance creates friction. That's a bar, y'all. Meditate on that. Resistance creates friction. So I'm in the early stages of studying Stoicism. And I believe this is from Marcus Aurelius, one of the most famous Stoics. The obstacle is the way, okay? What stands in the way becomes the way. So when shit hits the fan, you have to look at, okay, this is happening for a reason. Instead of being so resistant, instead of denying it, instead of blowing up about it, surrender.
Yeah.
Because all that resistance is creating friction. The car accident I was in, it happened for a reason. I was making a turn my ass shouldn't have made. I made it a million different times. And it caught up to me. Luckily, it didn't catch up in a big way. It was a minor accident. The nanny, the situation, now it forced me, okay, I got to restructure some stuff. How can I make sure my kids get the care so I can handle my business? Resistance creates friction. So whatever you find a lot of friction in your life, see why you're resistant. And just see what happens when you surrender and you sit in stillness. Just see what comes
see what
about.
Happens, yeah.
So
hey, Ashe.
All right. Once again, thank y'all for vibing with us here at the Hear Him Out show. We thank y'all for giving us your time. We appreciate y'all. Please subscribe, like, share, leave a comment. Even if you're a troll, hey, we welcome it. It's all good. So once again, we appreciate y'all. This right here, we created this space for men to be heard and for women to listen.
Our only aim is to speak truth, add value, and offer a perspective that has the potential to lead to growth and elevation.
So with that being said, we appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Peace.